My name is Jeanette, and I'm 33 years old. Christmas at my parents' house had become unbearable over the years, not because of the usual awkward tension or the forced cheer, but because there was a quiet cruelty baked into it that everyone pretended was family banter. It wasn't banter. It was my sister Rebecca picking people apart, and my parents laughing just enough to keep the peace while someone else became the entertainment. Rebecca always needed a target. One year it was our cousin after her divorce. Another year it was our uncle for gaining weight. The year before it had been me, and I'd done what I always did, smiled too tightly, swallowed my feelings, and told myself it wasn't worth making a scene. This year she chose my daughter. My daughter is 8. She still believes in good things. She still thinks family means something, and she adores Christmas in a way that makes your chest hurt if you let yourself think about it too long. We'd spent days getting ready together. She helped mash potatoes, kneaded the dough for dinner rolls, and kept checking on the ham in the oven like it was her own project. She wanted to wear her red sweater with the little white buttons, the one she calls the fancy one, and she was so proud to carry our food into my parents' house like we were contributing to something warm and real. The minute we walked in, Rebecca did what she always does. She scanned the room like a person looking for weak spots. She looked at the dishes we brought and said loud enough for everyone to hear that I still cook like a 50s housewife with no internet. My mom chuckled. My dad didn't look up from the football game. My daughter didn't seem to notice, which was part of what made it worse. Rebecca had this talent for making cruelty sound like a joke, like you'd be unreasonable to react to it. She asked my daughter if she'd been promoted to head servant this year. Then she leaned over and whispered something to my mom, and they both laughed, like they were sharing a private little truth about us. My daughter stayed busy, folding napkins into triangles and lining them up carefully, adjusting the forks until they were straight. She didn't say anything. She just kept working, focused and proud and quiet. Looking back, I can't decide if she didn't understand what was happening or if she understood too much and decided the safest thing was to keep moving. I noticed Rebecca's phone out before I understood what she was doing. At first, I thought she was taking a normal family video, the kind people post to show off the table or the food or the kids in their holiday outfits. Then I heard her laugh, a sharp little laugh that never means anything kind, and I saw her angle the camera toward my daughter like she'd found the perfect shot. She whispered something to my dad, handed him the phone, and they both laughed. That was the moment I knew. Not suspected. Knew. I walked over and held my hand out. Rebecca pulled the phone back slightly, like she wanted to make me ask twice. I didn't. I took it. On the screen was a video of my daughter smoothing down the napkins, setting the forks with intense concentration. The caption on Facebook made my vision go hot for a second. Look at this loser's kid. She's young and a servant. It had already been posted. People had already liked it. The little thumbs-up icons were there like proof that humiliation travels fast when you package it as a joke. I looked at Rebecca and told her to delete it. She smirked. Something old and ugly rose in me. Not just anger, but the memory of every time I'd been told to be quiet, to be the bigger person, to not ruin the holiday, to not make things uncomfortable. I grabbed Rebecca by the hair and pulled her into the hallway. It wasn't even a decision. It was instinct. Years of biting my tongue came up all at once and turned into motion. Rebecca started yelling immediately, calling me insane, calling me dramatic, calling me unstable, the same words she always used when she didn't get her way. I didn't respond. I just held her there until she deleted it in front of me. No one stepped in. Not my mom, not my dad. Not even when Rebecca screamed that I was attacking her. My parents stayed where they were, frozen in that familiar cowardice, the kind that protects the aggressor by pretending nothing is happening. I handed Rebecca her phone back and walked into the living room like I'd just crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I told my daughter we were leaving. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't explain it in a way that would make her feel responsible. I just said, "We're done here." My daughter looked up at me, her hand still on the table, and she nodded. That was all. No protest, no confusion, just a quiet nod that made me feel like she'd been waiting for me to say it. We put on our coats and walked out. No one followed us. No one said goodbye. No one called my name like they wanted to stop it. They let us go the way they always let things go when it's easier to lose someone than to confront Rebecca. Back at home, I made us hot cocoa. My daughter sat at the kitchen table, swinging her legs, and said she liked being with just me better. She said it so simply it almost broke me. Like it wasn't a dramatic declaration, just an observation she'd been collecting for a while. Later, when she was asleep, I sat alone in my kitchen and cried into my hands. Not just for what happened, but for all the years I'd let people like Rebecca make me smaller. I wondered how many times my daughter had noticed and stayed quiet. I wondered how many times she'd watched me swallow humiliation and decided that was what love looked like. That night, something in me died, or maybe something finally woke up. The next morning, my phone buzzed before I'd even finished my first cup of coffee. It was a text from Rebecca, casual and annoyed, like nothing significant had happened the night before. "Why can't I withdraw $900 from your account?" I stared at the screen, and then I laughed. Not the brittle, polite laugh I'd perfected at family gatherings, but a real one, sharp and surprised, like my body had finally caught up with my mind. For years, Rebecca had taken small things without asking, borrowed money, used my streaming accounts, stayed for a few nights that turned into weeks. I always said yes. After my husband died, I think part of me was afraid of being alone, so I tolerated terrible company just to keep someone close. Rebecca knew that. She always knew where the soft spots were. This time I typed back exactly what I felt. "I removed your access. Don't touch my accounts again." My phone rang almost immediately. I let it ring. Then a voice memo came through, her tone syrupy at first, pretending this was a misunderstanding. Then another call, then another text. "Are you seriously doing this over some stupid Facebook thing?" I didn't reply. By noon, she called again, and this time I answered. She started like we were still on the same side. "Something's wrong with your bank," she said. "They're blocking the transfer." I let the silence stretch until it got uncomfortable. "I blocked it," I said finally. She laughed, that fake laugh she uses when she's trying not to lose control. "Okay, but you'll fix it, right? I just need the $900 like always." "Like always," I repeated. "No." There was a pause. Then her voice sharpened. She said she was willing to move past the whole Christmas thing if I apologized for grabbing her and wired the money. She said it was ridiculous to ruin family over a joke. She said my daughter wouldn't even remember the video in a week, and that I was the one traumatizing her by making it dramatic. I hung up. The messages didn't stop. Guilt came first, then manipulation, then insults. She said I was emotionally unstable, that this was about my dead husband and not her, that I was isolating myself and turning into some bitter shell of a woman. She said my daughter was going to grow up lonely because of my choices. Every word was designed to push the same buttons she'd been pushing my whole life. That evening, I put my phone on silent and baked cookies with my daughter. We played music and danced around the kitchen, flour everywhere, laughing in a way that felt lighter than it had in months. She didn't know anything was wrong. Or maybe she did and just chose joy anyway. The next morning, at 8:15, someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, Rebecca was standing there in full makeup, dressed like she was heading to a job interview. She didn't wait to be invited in. She pushed past me and started talking fast, pacing my kitchen like she owned it. She said she understood I was upset. She said the post was meant to be funny. She said our parents thought I overreacted. Then she stopped, sat down at my table, smiled softly, and said, "But I'm here to forgive you." "Forgive me." She opened her phone and added casually, "So if we can fix that $900 situation, I'll consider it water under the bridge." I looked at her and said one word, "No." She stared at me like I'd spoken another language. Then she leaned forward, eyes narrowing, and said, "Are you really doing this to prove you're not a loser? That your kid's not a loser?" I slapped her. It wasn't a decision. It was years of swallowing comments, staying quiet, keeping peace for people who never deserved it, finally finding an exit. I opened the front door and pointed outside. She left without another word. That evening, my daughter asked me if her aunt was mad. I told her we were making new rules now, and rule number 1 was that we don't let people treat us like that anymore. She nodded, picked up her crayons, and went back to coloring, like the conversation made perfect sense. The next morning, my parents called. They didn't ask what happened. They didn't ask how my daughter was. They said we needed to find a compromise, and I knew exactly what was coming next. When my parents called the next morning, I knew what it would be about before I even answered. It wasn't concern. It wasn't curiosity. It was damage control. My dad's voice came on first, which was unusual. Normally, my mom did the smoothing, the softening, the pretending not to choose sides while always choosing one. But this time, my dad spoke low and firm, the way he does when he thinks authority alone should settle things. He asked if I had time to come over so we could talk it through like adults. I asked one question: is Rebecca going to be there? He said yes, like it was obvious, like any conversation that mattered would naturally include her. Then he added, she wants to work it out. That's when I understood I wasn't being invited to be heard. I was being summoned to be corrected. I said okay anyway. It wasn't weakness. It was curiosity. I wanted to hear it all said out loud, in one room, without filters or follow-up texts. I wanted to stop wondering if I'd imagined the imbalance, the cruelty, the way everyone bent around Rebecca while I was expected to absorb the fallout quietly. I wanted certainty. I told my daughter we were going to Grandma and Grandpa's house. She asked if her aunt would be there. I said yes. She didn't look excited, but she didn't complain either. She grabbed a book and a pack of markers and told me she'd sit quietly if it was going to be grown-up stuff. That broke something in me, the way she was already preparing to make herself smaller. We arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. Rebecca's car was already in the driveway. I parked behind it and sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, staring at the front door. My daughter reached over, unbuckled her seatbelt, and said, "Let's just get it over with." She sounded tired, 8 years old, and already exhausted by adults. Inside, it was exactly what I expected. Rebecca was stretched out on the couch, coffee in hand, legs tucked under her like she was at a spa. My mom stood up too quickly and gave me a nervous smile. My dad nodded once, already positioned at the head of the room like a mediator who'd decided the verdict in advance. My daughter curled up in the corner with her book and didn't look up. My mom started, voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. She said she hated seeing us fight, especially around the holidays. She said things had clearly gotten out of hand, emotions were high, and we all needed to remember we were family. My dad followed with a speech about understanding each other's perspectives and not letting one incident tear everyone apart. Then they turned to Rebecca. She didn't apologize. Not really. She said she was sorry I felt hurt by the video. She said she never intended to upset anyone. She said she didn't appreciate being physically attacked and that she'd had nightmares about it. She made herself sound fragile, wounded, like the real victim in the room. Then she tilted her head and said, "Honestly, if I'd known Jeanette was in such a sensitive place, I never would have shared it." Sensitive place. She went on, saying my daughter hadn't even noticed, that she wasn't hurt, that I'd turned it into a big thing by reacting the way I did. "You're the one making it traumatic," she said, calm and confident. "Kids take cues from their parents." I asked her if she would have liked it if someone posted a video of her child online and called them a servant. She rolled her eyes. It was a joke, a dumb, harmless joke. The only one acting like it meant something is you. Then, like she couldn't help herself, she added, "It just feels like you've been waiting for a reason to punish me, like you want to feel superior." That's when my mom stepped in again, trying to redirect. She said Rebecca was under a lot of stress, barely making rent, struggling with her kids. She suggested that maybe Rebecca felt threatened because I'd been helping her financially for so long. I asked what any of that had to do with my daughter being humiliated online. No one answered. Instead, Rebecca launched into a breakdown of her finances. Her ex wasn't paying child support again. The boys needed new shoes. Bills were bouncing. She said she was doing everything she could. I'd heard every version of this speech before. Then she said the line that clarified everything. "You were helping just fine before," she said. "So what changed, really?" What changed was that I stopped letting her hurt my child. I told her I wouldn't be paying her rent again, that it was over. The help I'd given came from kindness, not obligation, and she'd stomped all over it. She laughed, not because it was funny, but because she couldn't believe I was serious. "You're really going to do this," she said. "Throw away your own family over a Facebook post, over your weird little parenting pride trip." Before I could respond, my daughter stood up. She didn't cry. She didn't say anything. She just picked up her coat and walked into the hallway like she'd reached her limit before I had. Something inside me went very still. I stood up and told Rebecca this was the last conversation we would ever have. I told my parents they were free to support her however they wanted, but I would not be part of it. Not emotionally, not financially, not ever again. No one stopped me. We walked out. In the car, my daughter buckled herself in and asked if we could get ice cream. Like the worst part was already over. I realized then that she understood something it had taken me years to learn. Walking away isn't cruel. Staying is. I thought walking out of my parents' house would be the end of it. I imagined Rebecca sulking, my parents grumbling. The story settling into the familiar family version where I was difficult and everyone else was just trying their best. Rebecca always bounced back. She always landed somewhere soft, usually in someone else's wallet. I didn't expect peace, but I expected distance. 2 weeks later, I got a message from someone I barely knew. It was one of Rebecca's former neighbors, a woman I'd spoken to exactly once when I helped carry groceries into Rebecca's place during one of her everything is falling apart weeks. The message was hesitant, apologetic, like she wasn't sure she should be sending it at all. "Sorry if this is weird," she wrote, "but I thought you should know your sister's moving out. There are kids' clothes and toys by the dumpster, and it looks like she's selling furniture. She didn't look okay." I didn't reply. I just sat there with the message glowing on my screen while my daughter was in the next room building a Lego tower, humming softly to herself. Rebecca moving didn't shock me. Rebecca spiraling didn't shock me either. What surprised me was how little relief I felt. There was no vindication, no satisfaction, just confirmation. That night, we were driving home from Target, the back seat full of groceries and school supplies, and without really deciding to, I took a detour. I drove past Rebecca's townhouse. The blinds were gone. The front door stood open. One of her boys sat on the front step eating cereal out of a mixing bowl, legs swinging, eyes glued to a cracked tablet. Inside, the place looked hollow, not packed, emptied. A mattress leaned against the wall, piles of laundry, no couch, no shelves. It didn't look like a transition. It looked like collapse. I kept driving. My daughter didn't ask questions. The next morning, my mom called. Her voice sounded thick, like she'd been crying for a while. She told me Rebecca and the boys were moving into a 2-bedroom apartment across town, half the size of the old place. Then she added, after a pause, that she and my dad had decided to step in and help with the rent. Groceries, too, if needed. She said it like it was a moral victory. I didn't respond right away. Then she asked the question she'd been holding on to. "Are you happy now?" It wasn't curiosity, it was accusation. "I'm not happy," I said. "I'm done." She told me not to come running to them next time I needed help. I told her I wouldn't, and for the first time, I knew it was true. That might have been the end of it if it weren't for what happened a few days later. I got an email from my bank late at night. 3 failed login attempts from an unrecognized device. Then another email about a denied password reset. My chest tightened. I changed my password immediately. Then I changed it again. I added 2-factor authentication. I pulled my credit report just to be safe. Everything looked clean. The bank flagged the activity and told me they'd monitor the account. I didn't need them to tell me who it was. I didn't confront Rebecca. I didn't tell my parents. I said nothing. I just closed ranks. A day later, Rebecca posted on Facebook a long, vague paragraph about hard times and doing everything for my kids and needing a fresh start. There was a GoFundMe link at the bottom. No apology, no explanation, just a quiet request for money wrapped in martyrdom. People commented hearts and prayers. Someone tagged my parents. Someone else asked how they could help. My daughter saw it over my shoulder. She leaned in and asked, "Is that the aunt who called me a servant?" I asked if she remembered that. She nodded. "I didn't say anything because I didn't want you to cry again." That sentence hurt more than anything Rebecca had ever said. She'd noticed everything. The video, the tension, my hands shaking in the kitchen that night. I'd been so focused on protecting her from the storm that I hadn't realized she'd been standing in the rain with me the whole time. That night, after she went to bed, I pulled a small wooden box from the back of my closet. Inside were a few things from my husband. Notes, photos, his watch, a USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop and played a video I hadn't watched in years. He was standing in our old kitchen, helping our daughter pour pancake batter. She spilled it everywhere and froze, eyes wide, ready to cry. He laughed, wiped her hands, and said, "That's perfect. Now you know how not to do it. You're doing great." I sat there watching them, thinking about the kind of man he was, how he made people feel capable, how he made her feel safe. That was what I was fighting for. Not revenge, not payback, peace. And the right kind of future. Rebecca went quiet after the GoFundMe. Silence from her never meant peace. It meant planning. A few days later, my cousin Julia texted me late at night. She said Rebecca had been telling people I attacked her in front of my daughter, that she was scared of me, that she'd had to leave her home because of me. I didn't defend myself. I was tired of explaining reality to people who preferred a simpler lie. 2 days after that, my mom sent a group text saying we should all come over for dinner, that it was time to talk things out like adults, that holding grudges was tearing the family apart. She said Rebecca would be there. She promised it would be calm. I almost said no, but something in me wanted one last confirmation, one last moment of clarity. I wanted to hear exactly who they would choose when it came down to it. So I said yes. We arrived 10 minutes late on purpose, not to make a statement, just to remind myself that I no longer rushed to meet their expectations. The house looked exactly the same as it always had. Same wreath on the door, same smell of overcooked vegetables and air freshener, same illusion of normalcy. Rebecca's car was already in the driveway. I parked behind it and sat there for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel, breathing slowly. My daughter reached over, unbuckled her seatbelt, and said quietly, "Let's just get it over with." 8 years old, and already fluent in adult tension. Inside, Rebecca was already seated at the table, legs crossed, phone beside her plate, talking loudly like she owned the room. My mother stood too quickly when she saw us, her smile stretched thin with nerves. My father nodded once, the way he does when he's decided this is a meeting, not a family gathering. My daughter went straight to the corner with her book and markers without being asked. She didn't look up. Dinner started with small talk that went nowhere. Forks scraped plates, glasses clinked. No one mentioned Christmas. No one mentioned the video. No one mentioned the post or the bank alerts or the GoFundMe. Finally, my father cleared his throat and said we were here to move forward. My mother nodded, eyes already glassy, like she'd rehearsed this speech in the mirror. Rebecca took that as her cue. She said she was sorry I felt hurt by the video. She said she never intended to upset anyone. She said she'd been under a lot of stress and that humor was her coping mechanism. She said she didn't appreciate being physically attacked and that she'd had nightmares about it. She framed herself as fragile, shaken, misunderstood. Then she looked at me and said, "If I'd known you were in such a sensitive place, I never would have posted it." Sensitive place. She went on, saying my daughter hadn't even noticed, that she wasn't hurt, that I'd made it traumatic by reacting the way I did. "Kids mirror their parents," she said calmly. "You turned it into drama." I asked her one question. Would you be okay if someone posted a video of your child online and called them a servant? She rolled her eyes. It was a joke, a dumb, harmless joke. You're the only one acting like it meant something. Then my mother stepped in, like she always does when Rebecca starts to lose control. She said Rebecca was barely making rent, that her ex was behind on child support again, that the boys were struggling, that maybe Rebecca felt threatened because I'd been helping her financially for so long, as if money explained cruelty, as if stress justified humiliation. I asked again what any of that had to do with my daughter. No one answered. Rebecca launched into her financial situation like it was a closing argument. Bills, shoes, groceries, how hard she was trying. Then she said the sentence that made everything click into place. "You were helping just fine before," she said. "So what changed?" What changed was that she crossed a line she couldn't uncross. I told her I wouldn't be paying her rent. Not now, not ever again. That the help I gave had come from kindness, not obligation, and she'd crushed it. She laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "You're really going to throw away your own family over a Facebook post," she said, "over your weird little parenting pride trip." Before I could answer, my daughter stood up. She didn't cry. She didn't say anything. She picked up her coat and walked into the hallway like she'd heard enough. Something in me settled completely. I stood up and told Rebecca this was the last conversation we would ever have. I told my parents they were free to support her however they wanted, but I would not be part of it. Not emotionally, not financially, not again. No one stopped me. No one argued. No one chased us to the door. In the car, my daughter buckled herself in and asked if we could get ice cream. That's when I knew. She already understood what had taken me years to learn. Walking away isn't cruel. Staying is. It's been 6 months now. 6 months without calls from my parents. No check-ins, no texts, not even a message on my daughter's birthday, which came 3 weeks after that dinner. She didn't ask about it. I think she already knew they wouldn't reach out. Rebecca moved again. Cheaper place. New GoFundMe. Same story. My parents help her with rent now. Groceries, too. They tell themselves they're doing the right thing. Maybe they need that story to survive. I don't. What I know is this. I don't miss them. I don't miss the forced smiles or the quiet judgments. I don't miss pretending cruelty is humor to keep the peace. My daughter is thriving. She cooks now. Sets the table on Sundays because she wants to, not because anyone tells her to. Last week, she folded napkins into perfect little triangles just like she used to. I watched quietly. After dinner, I told her it was incredible. She smiled and said, "It's nicer when it's just us." It is. Family isn't blood. It's safety. It's respect. It's knowing you don't have to make yourself smaller to belong. Rebecca chose cruelty. My parents chose silence. And they lost us.